it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
Right, we've got bonus slice content for you here on Saturday night of the Open Championship. First time we've done this. Our bonuses so far have been golfers and interviews, and we can't promise fireworks in the same way that we had them from people like Lorenzo Vera and Ryan Fox. But hopefully we've enough to say over the next half an hour, shorter than your usual sliced episode time, about the Open Championship. Now, because of that time limit, we can't necessarily get too deep into what we've been doing, Sam, and possibly nobody cares. But I did want to ask you one question. Now, we can start recording again if this is too personal, so please just use that card if you need to. But you told me you were away with your wife this weekend, right? And I looked on your social media this morning and you were teeing off. How did you do it? Have you got one of those wives who likes a round of golf, or what's happened here?
Well, all that's happened is, and to be honest, when the trip was booked, I didn't realise that it was open weekend. I'll say that initially, which is maybe a bit of a fault on my part. However, she was quite happy for me to go off and play golf, and she made use of the spa facilities at the hotel. So it was the perfect combo, really. I recommend it. If you can find somewhere that has both, and your wife really detests golf like my wife does, then I recommend it. The other thing I recommend, Ben. I don't know if you've ever done this with your wife. Your wife's in a similar position where she hates golf, right?
Oh, yeah, all sport, really.
Okay, right. So I'm very similar to my wife. I encourage you to play the game where you get her to list as many golfers as she can, professional golfers. It's really interesting.
Well, my beloved is a fan of Pointless, so obviously she's picked up enough knowledge from there. Her stock answer is Hideki Matsuyama, and quite often it's correct. Masters champions of the last 50 years, Hideki Matsuyama, pointless answer. Disgraceful, really. A damning indictment of the people of this country. One of
really
many.
Is.
But she did genuinely turn to me the other day, and she said, it was Friday morning and it was on TV, and she said, oh, where's this? I said, oh, Portrush. Oh, right. Where's that Adam from? And I said, Adam Scott. And she said, no. The Google the sexy priest, and it turned out this was what's his name, the guy who's played the priest in Fleabag, whose surname is Scott. Maybe is his name Alex Scott or something?
Oh, yeah, possibly, yeah.
I should know. He's a very famous actor. Anyway, That's who she was talking about. So we very quickly got off the subject of, we've gone from where is the golf to let's talk about something else in record time. But yeah, it's good that she doesn't love it. I think it's
yeah. I need her own interests.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Anyway, we can't delay this much further, Sam. We need to talk about the Open, I guess.
Well, yeah. For the reason I was away, I only caught the back nine today. So did I miss anything interesting on the front nine apart from? I mean, I saw obviously Scheffler make an eagle on 7, which obviously felt like a bit of a turning point, having had a bit of a slow start, and you kind of thought, oh, okay, you could just have one of those days where it's a bit quiet, and then suddenly he turns it on, and it's before you know it, he's back in control again. But yeah,
you summed it up nicely there. You didn't miss a lot. Obviously, we got a good start from McIlroy, curled in a 30-foot putt or whatever it was on the first. We got a really bad start from Brian Harman. A few small details, but you're right to highlight the notable feature of those glorious first 6 holes where the outcome of this tournament was in some doubt. And only because of Scheffler not quite getting into the next gear. But I did think it was interesting. A lot of those players in the very final few groups were pretty scrappy coming out of the gates. And I do think maybe there is a bit of a Scheffler factor, and there are others who probably paid the price for pushing. I think Bob McIntyre's a good example today. He was he's always aggressive, but he just he threw away a lot of shots today. And I think Scheffler's presence at the top of the leaderboard, rather, if you just take him out of it completely and the leader's Hao Tong Lee, I think there are players making different decisions and maybe with better outcomes. So just one of the many ways he affects the outcome of a tournament. Obviously, the primary way is by just being better at golf than everybody else.
Well, I couldn't help but notice as well, Ben. I just checked the stats just now that he is leading the field in putting. Which,
Mm.
when you're Scottie Scheffler and you're leading the field in putting, that generally means you're probably going to win.
Yeah, but it actually also reveals. I don't want to do anything to diminish his achievement, and I'm sure when we talk again on Monday, we have to be careful not to do the review of the tournament now, I suppose, because there is
Yeah.
still a
Of
round
course.
to go.
Yeah.
Um, but when we talk on Monday, I'm sure we'll both do our best if he does do what feels inevitable to lavish praise on him appropriately. But we do talk about putting as like inherently volatile and hard to predict. And actually, if he'd had an average putting week, he's got work to do tomorrow. And he's not driven the ball well. And he's not been
Yeah.
sharp around the greens. And if you'd said what are the sort of guarantees of the week, you think, well, he'll be sharp around the greens, he'll drive the ball well, his irons will be good. But last week his putting was hopeless, and it calls to mind Morikawa, doesn't it, at Royal St George's, who went from the Scottish Open obscurity where he just didn't do anything right, and obviously that wasn't the case with Scheffler. But Scheffler putted really badly in Scotland, and he's just turned it around.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you say, if he puts this well, he pretty much win any tournament anywhere. All the stuff we talk about the randomness of links golf, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't
Well,
matter.
especially when you have, what's been relatively calm conditions, for most of the week as well. And I think that's the thing. We talked about it, don't we? The thing that's going to hurt him, I think, is if you suddenly get strong winds, then that might kind of throw off his sort of, his strong points. And that's not to say you can't manage playing in the wind, by the way. But that's the one thing that I think, if suddenly out of nowhere they're getting 30-mile-an-hour gusts tomorrow, then maybe it brings a few people into the mix, maybe Mr. McIntyre. But as the forecast doesn't suggest that's likely to happen.
No, it doesn't. I think it would be really interesting if he was teeing off. If you got one of those open days where it's calm until 1 o'clock and then the wind starts to whip up, that would add a really interesting dynamic. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And look, he has had a few of those things go his way. I know he was caught out in some really bad rain, and actually, I think on scoring averages, he's on the wrong side of the draw. But the final few holes on Friday were just, you could not have asked to play those specific holes at a better time. Players were all of a sudden nearly driving the 17th green and things like that. And today, I mean, moving into the back nine, really there were two key holes. There are two holes which either determine whether we've got something that feels, whether it is or not inevitable, or whether actually suddenly Rory McIlroy is right there on his tail. And those are the 11th and the 14th. And I actually didn't see it. Did you see 11? I saw the chip afterwards, but I didn't see the shots to get there.
No, I don't think. No, I think maybe that was maybe I started watching on 12. I think no, so I didn't. No.
So he's hacked out from the
Yeah.
back of the green and got up. He sort of hacked it to 9 feet and
Yeah.
made the putt. And then obviously on 14, I know Radar was very complimentary of the shot, and again, I don't want to diminish that, but he was in a horrible spot off the tee on 14. And ultimately, there are times where it doesn't matter who you are, how strong you are, how good you are at finding the middle of the club face, you can't hit the ball as far as he did. And he actually got it very close to the front of the green. His brilliance is, one, he left the putt beneath the hole, and two, nobody on planet Earth thought he was going to miss, and he didn't miss. And then he has that thing, and he did this, reminded me. So at the PGA Championship, the end of round one, he went bang, bang, and all of a sudden he's in command of the tournament at that early stage. He did the same here in round two, but as well in round three. So he's come through that. He hasn't made a birdie since the 8th hole. After I think he went eagle birdie, didn't he? But actually, all the good stuff we're talking about on 11 and 14, he's saving pars, and he didn't birdie the 12th. What does he do? He birdies 16, and again, he birdied it, hitting the perfect shot on the right side. The worst case scenario is a 50-foot putt. He left himself 15 feet, and it never looked anywhere else. It's pure genius. It is so good. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be that person who sort of starts using Tiger comparisons, but it certainly has got to the point where, you see him in this position and you are kind of thinking this thing is over. And, it might not be, but, there's very few people that you kind of think, okay, he's got, this kind of lead going into the final round. It's almost guaranteed that he's going to win because he just has that way of dealing with the pressure. He doesn't seem to feel the pressure like a lot of people would when they've got a 4-shot lead going into the final round of a major. It helps that he's won. He's obviously won several majors already, but he just has that sort of calmness. Maybe it's this thing where it golf, the result of golf, isn't the most important thing to him. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but it's impressive.
Yeah, maybe it's hard to know exactly what A lot of people think that is his secret weapon, don't they? I think in some ways it diminishes the technical brilliance, but it's clearly part of what is a perfect formula for him. He's got everything as he wants it. Really stable home life, his faith, and then he's got this ability to get the club face exactly where he wants it. It's phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, in terms of it feeling inevitable, I think the thing is as well, by and large, I kind of think, we've had some runaway winners in the Open, and I know we've had some late drama. Jean Van der Velde's the most dramatic example, but I actually think the Open, in some ways, is kind of a good one to be nursing a lead. He won't nurse it; he'll play like he did today. But I think Harman made it look really easy, didn't he?
Yeah.
Shane Lowry made it look really easy. Well, Brian Harman's won 3 tournaments in 10 years. Shane Lowry's won about 5. But they made it look easy in links golf. And I wonder why that is. I think at Portrush specifically, apart from the weather, as you pointed out, I think almost in any conditions, it's not the most penal of courses off the tee. And we've seen that because he's not driven it well.
Yeah.
The bunkering is sort of, I don't know, I'd have to look closer at the sort of shot dispersion maps and stuff, but I feel like they may be taking quite a lot of bunkers out of it. I've barely seen, and sometimes just playing tactically short, but it not being too big a handicap. And the best example, I don't think I've seen anyone play out of a bunker on the first hole all week. I don't know about you, but you've got those bunkers left and right. Yeah. And I don't think I've seen a single shot from one of them. So it's sort of, it feels like a course where if you play strategic golf and you're in control, what really can go wrong? I hope that's a famous last words. No offense to Scottie, but if he starts with a 7 and all of a sudden we've got Rory charging, where do you think the big danger comes from? Where do you think the challenge comes? Is it Rory?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the leaderboard here in front of me, and I'm looking through it, and I hope from a sort of selfish perspective that it's Tyrrell Hatton. I just saw his interview just now before we started recording, and he said, "I'm really disappointed. I'm disappointed because I don't feel like I played very well." He still shot 3 under. But he obviously feels like for him that was substandard. So if he comes out and he's playing more like the kind of Tyrrell that we know, I mean, obviously that's his joint best score of the week, but the course was quite gettable, wasn't it? Or I'm sure it felt like it was to him. Then he could be someone I think that could put him under pressure. Obviously McIlroy as well, who's 6 back alongside Hatton. Those to me would be the 2 biggest dangers, and that's not to take anything away from Matt Fitzpatrick, who today has been his sort of blip really, and he didn't play badly by any stretch, level par, but or even Haotong, let's remember the fact that he has come an awful long way. I put this up on Twitter earlier on. 2023, he missed 20 of 22 cuts. Right, that's only 2 years ago. Yeah, exactly. 2 years ago today, he was in the middle of a horrendous patch of golf. So for him to have got back to the stage now that he's genuinely, contending for a major, if the tournament end today, he's finishing runner-up in a major to Scottie Scheffler. That's really impressive. So I'm certainly not going to say that he's out of this, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the one. And I've written this in my sort of mini wrap of. I've put a piece out that's sort of a mini wrap of Scheffler's brilliance and is a holding piece for tomorrow's betting preview. But it's left us clutching at different. What possibly can happen here. And one of the small things that I did note down is Haotong's quite difficult to play with. Now Scheffler's immune to everything, so why would this bother him? But he's really slow. Mm-hmm. He's really jumpy and fidgety and chirpy in his, I don't think there'll be a lot of dialogue between them, but he's just that he wears his heart on his sleeve. He might yell, just little thing. Harman played really badly today. Now Harman's really slow, so that shouldn't have been an excuse. But that's probably one of the things. And look, you're right to call out Haotong. I think if he does go on to finish second, you'd think that's a PGA Tour card wrapped up. And I want to remain focused where we can on the Open because it's far more important than that. But again, Scheffler forces you to start thinking about subplots, doesn't he? I've been thinking about the Ryder Cup. Is Chris Gotter up 68 away from the Ryder Cup? Is Rasmus Højgaard going to finish third and be back right in those automatic qualification berths? There's loads of little storylines like that. that we wouldn't usually be talking about on the eve of the final round, but we're left to because it feels like we're scrapping around for bits and pieces.
Yeah, I want to give my son some credit actually, who hasn't shown a tremendous interest in watching golf. He likes playing it, but occasionally he calls things out, and he looked at the leaderboard earlier on. He said, "Oh, Hao Tong Lee, he's doing really well." He said, "If he wins this, he'll probably be heading to the PGA Tour." Am I right?
Oh, come on.
Ah,
That's
well
brilliant.
done, son.
It's really, really good that he is across the relevant pathways in the world of golf. I hope he's noticed that JC Ritchie's made 25 birdies and an eagle on the Challenge Tour this week, but maybe he hasn't. Yeah, I mean, look, I guess just another thing to say on Tyrrell. I thought his round was quite reminiscent of Bob's round on Friday. In the end, because McIntyre birdied 17 on Friday, it's probably hard to say he didn't get anything out of it because I think he shot 5 under or something, and it moved him up the leaderboard. But I thought Hatton today, and you can spin this either way because he's holed out a wedge that I don't think he thought he hit very well, and he's made an eagle where he might have made a par. But I just felt he definitely didn't have a good day on the greens. He left a couple of sort of 20-foot putts short online, and then on 16. He's made. I think he's hit that ball exactly where he wanted to hit it on 16 because the way the pin was, you've got the only way to get it close. Well, you just hit it straight at the flag like Scheffler did, I suppose. But one of the best ways to play the sort of percentages is to use the bank on the left. The problem with doing that is if you go long, and I think he just hit it too well, and he ended up dropping a shot there. Couldn't birdie 17 or 18. So I felt like he left a few out there today. It may not make a difference, but I felt, he would have, because he was playing before Hao Tong, if he could have posted 10 under, he'd have been in the final group. And I think he probably should be, which is a shame, for those of us who put him up, but also for him, because it's another step. Whatever happens, it's another step forward, isn't it? But yeah, a shame for him.
Yeah. What of, talk to me about some of these other contenders. I mean, let's look at the other players who are tied fourth, so 6 shots back. Harris English, Chris Gotter up. Those are the other two that we haven't mentioned. I mean, do you think either of those could mount a charge? I mean, Gotter up, really impressive over the last couple of weeks, you have to say, and Harris has looked so solid when I've watched him. I've been really impressed with him.
Yeah, and he's had to cope with the fact that his caddy was not allowed into the country because of a 10-year-old drugs conviction. I've not read any more into that. I don't know exactly what the details are. Someone pithily remarked that had the caddy flown into Dublin and then just driven north, he would have been there, which I quite enjoyed. So a lack of forward play. You see, if that was Scheffler, he would not have missed that detail and his caddy would be right there with him. But Harris English has done very well. He's clearly playing some of the best golf of his career. I think for both of those guys, it's a nice pairing. I suspect they don't know each other that well, but I think playing with a compatriot is probably going to help. I think maybe there's an argument that playing just before McIlroy and the fanfare of that, it would have been hard for Jordan Smith today. It would have been a great experience. I'm sure if he talks about it, he'll say that that's one of the most memorable days of his career. But it's also very, very hard. Whereas Matt Fitzpatrick, who plays with Rory on Sunday, again, I think that's a really nice pairing. Do you remember they played together against Cantlay, didn't they, in the Ryder Cup? The fighty Ryder Cup game was Fitzpatrick and McIlroy. So, there maybe there's something in that, and maybe they can spark off each other.
So just Jordan Smith. I just wanted to say he said that he was crapping himself on the first tee. So. Yeah, that was his immediate experience, but I'm sure it was enjoyable thereafter.
Yeah, hopefully he'll take a lot from that. You go further back. I mean, the tee times are out. Worth saying for anyone listening who doesn't know, they tee off about an hour earlier in case of a playoff, which is about as unnecessary a caveat as we could possibly have. We got the Højgaard twins. It's a shame they're not playing together. Rasmus plays with Bob. Nikolai plays with Henley. Henley putted the lights out today, made a nice move. You got Clark and Harmon playing together. That's quite a notable group, given that they're both, again, slow as boats, but also Ryder Cup teammates looking to get back in. And then Matt Wallace, what a round that was for Matt Wallace.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people today who have not spent any time over the last 48 hours considering the thought of winning the Claret Jug, but who have been playing for something and have really changed potentially their whole seasons if they can go and play well tomorrow as well. And Matt Wallace would be one of those. He's convinced he's playing well, but it's not been showing. And I know he said he's got this daily. Every time he hits a shot, his caddy reminds him what they're aiming for, which is the Ryder Cup, and it feels too intense to me. That feels like you're making life hard for yourself. But then again, what did he birdie in Denmark that time when he thought he had to, like the last 6 holes or something daft? So yeah, maybe you can go low again tomorrow.
Well, different strokes for different folks, isn't it? I think some people really like that kind of incentive to sort of, sort of carrot to dangle ahead of other people would rather just focus on the job in hand. But yeah, and some other players to call out, Ben. I mean, of the players that are in the sort of, top 20 or thereabouts, Oliver Lindell. I mean, that's, he's coming off DP World Tour, not had a flying start to the season really, but for him to be, at that sort of position going into the final round of a major, it was fantastic. Christopher Wrighton continuing his good form recently. Lee Westwood, I mean, what a back nine, 29, back nine. I mean, it's been an impressive week for him at 52.
29,
I think
29 with a lip out on 18.
Yeah.
Someone told me, I've not verified this, but it's the first time anyone shot a 9 of beginning with a 4 and a 9 beginning with a 2 in a major championship, or maybe just the Open Championship. But that's brilliant, isn't it? And Tiger shot something like 40-30, didn't he, in the 97 Masters? But I don't think it was 20 something. Yeah, it was a phenomenal back nine from Westwood. You're right to call out Lindell. I mean, he qualified, so he's the. I know there are guys here who qualified in other ways, like Chris Gotterup came through the Scottish Open. But in terms of final qualifying, Oliver Lindell is the one. And for players like him, by the way, and this is a target I do think is worth mentioning, the top 10, as a top 10 and ties, will get invited back to Birkdale. And obviously that's not going to be in the mind of the Højgaards and Fitzpatrick and Harris English, but it has to be. And actually Mark Leishman's one player who came off the course today and said, that's my goal. And actually the other one I wanted to mention there is Dustin Johnson. Now, I'm not going to suddenly tell you I think Dustin Johnson is finding motivation in things like qualifying for tournaments that are a year away, when I've questioned his motivation to even pick up a golf club. But it's possible. He's played well today. He's now within sight of the top 10, and his exemption runs out this year. So that'd be quite a nice story in itself. And the same for Westwood. For Westwood, it has to be a big target. I thought there was a slight irony to him saying, how it's the best tournament in the world and how wonderful it is. And he sort of wanted Tim Barter to say, well, why didn't you bother trying to qualify the last couple of years then? But I'm adding a negative note to a fine day for the Worksop wonder, so perhaps I shouldn't.
Yes, well, yeah, I think probably they don't want to sort of focus on those sort of things during or come up with something that might be seen as being aggravating. I don't know, but
especially when you've got Smash GC's Graham McDowell in the commentary booth this week. So.
Well, this is true. This is true. Who's been excellent, by the way. I mean, really, he's been. I've been impressed with him. Actually,
yeah,
I think
he's aggravatingly good at it, isn't he? It's really annoyed me. Should we talk about the other sort of thing that I wanted to mention, really? If I could have one wish for the final round, aside from maybe Hatton, those first 5-7 holes, in fact, you've got the second, the seventh, the par fives, you've got the fifth, which you can drive, you've got a couple of par threes, which are nowhere near as reluctant to give up birdies as the 16th. You can get on a run, and I think for this tournament to sort of breathe again, it needs McIlroy to get on that run. And it could happen. There is a scenario in which Scheffler makes a big mistake at the first. We've seen it all week. Some very, very good golfers have made the, and he's missed a lot of shots left. So feasibly, I'm maybe stretching things here, but he could run up a big score. All of a sudden, if McIlroy starts birdie eagle or something like that, that is what we need. That's the size of the task. But all of a sudden, you've got this scenario where actually there aren't that many people following the final group. You've got the whole of Northern Ireland following McIlroy. It gets loud, and he's run him down before, only for a FedEx Cup, and before Scheffler was the golfer he is today. But the other thing to say is that, this is a player, Scheffler, who admitted to being overwhelmed by trying to win the Masters for the first time, and I do think this is different to the PGA. It's a bigger thing. It's a history and the significance and the fact that it will have felt like the biggest challenge he faced. Once he'd won the Masters, like of the challenges that remain for you in your career, what's the biggest one? The Open is the one. I think he'll deal with it, and I think he'll win. I think he'll probably win by 4 or 5 shots. But you can see a scenario where, a bit of bad luck and Rory getting on a roll, and all of a sudden things come to life. And I think for the neutral, or even for the biased, that would be a great way for this tournament to end, because I do think it's been a great tournament. But the one thing a lot of people don't like, whether it's Lowry, whether it's Harman, whether it's Oosthuizen, and whether it's Scheffler, is someone running off and we know who's won the Open. There aren't many Opens actually where I can't remember the last one where we don't know who's won teeing off on 18. Really?
No, you'd have to go back a little way, wouldn't you?
Probably St Andrews, because you can make eagle, but we all felt Smith had, Smith has birdied it, and Cam Young eagled it, and Smith still won. So maybe that, but not really.
I think you're spot on though, Ben. I think the best hope is that Rory gets on a roll, and one thing that I've noticed, and you don't get a sense of it, fully on the broadcast, but I'm sure if you're there, it must be incredible. But the volume of the cheers that you're hearing when Rory does anything, particularly holding a birdie putt or something like that, it's akin to a Ryder Cup level volume. It really is, and obviously it's you've got a partisan crowd for obvious reasons. But it gets so loud, and if he can get on a roll, Scheffler will hear those roars. He'll know who they're for, right? And he can't be completely impervious to that. So, that would be. I agree with you. That would be the kind of the best case scenario, I think, to make it a really exciting Sunday. And listen, this is not, if it ends up being a landslide Scheffler victory, this is not to diminish, what he's done. It just purely from a golf fan's perspective, someone who wants to watch a sort of exciting, something like the Masters, that was a phenomenal watch because there were so many swings. I would love to see something like that. I suspect it won't happen, like you say, but we can but hope.
We can but hope, indeed. Should we? We should probably sign off, because we did say half an hour, and although we're not going to be wedded to that, should we sign off with our predicted 1, 2, 3? It feels like we can't. Because of my silly job, we can't often do any predictions in our regular Monday episodes, and it's probably a bit too early in the week as well. But let's do predictions. So winning margin, second and third.
Okay.
Well, shall I go first? Or do you want to go
for it?
Yeah.
No,
all right.
Go.
I think Scheffler's going to win the Open.
Why do you think that?
I'm going to go for a winning margin of 3. Don't know why exactly. I just think there's a lot of quality. Hao Tong surprised me today. I'm going to suggest that in the final group with Scheffler he might struggle. So, but I think someone from Fitzpatrick, McIlroy, Harris English, Tyrrell Hatton, one of those 4 will make a really good run, shoot 66, and get close enough without it ever being in serious doubt. So I'll go for Hatton second, McIlroy third. That'll do.
I think you might have just stolen mine, Ben. I too think that Houghton may struggle today. I was trying to think back to, it was Harding Park, wasn't it, where he was banging it, and I think he did struggle on the Sunday, from what I remember. But yeah, I think you might find it hard tomorrow. I think I can see Fitzpatrick sort of bouncing back from a sort of a not great scoring day. I think he's been very good. So I think Hatton's going to make a run. I think McIlroy might make a run, but then sort of stumble, maybe starts pressing too hard. So I'm going to go, just so I can be different to you, I'll say Scheffler. I'm going to say Scheffler by 4, Hatton second, and Fitzpatrick third.
Lovely. It'd be nice to get a strong English challenge. It's been so long. It's been nice hearing Sir Nick Faldo this week, but it's high time one of them won it. And it looks like, had it not been for Scheffler, again, you take him out, and you've got such a great, fascinating leaderboard, haven't you? But that's really? It. He's too good. How many great leaderboards there would have been if you'd have taken Tiger Woods out? But that's not how it works, and we have to bow at greatness. And I'm sure Absolutely. On Monday, when we're doing our regular episode without any technical issues, we'll be congratulating Scottie Scheffler on a phenomenal victory and a phenomenal season. But we'll see.
I fully expect so. But for anyone who has listened, thank you for joining us for our first ever major bonus episode. And please do listen again on Monday.
Bye.